The last 5 years have been life-changing for me and my family. You know, everything's happened so fast that sometimes I have to pinch myself.
Well, lucky, eh? Have this awesome weather. Yeah, that's right.
It's been a huge career leap. You know, I've had to sort of learn to be comfortable and also overcome that sort of imposter syndrome I think that a lot of people might experience when they're new to a space.
Sam stepped away from a very successful career in the fashion world, mixing with some of the most glamorous and beautiful people in the world to take on a huge new challenge.
We have this global crisis in climate change and we have to act.
So this is the seaweed we grow, the red asparagopsis. Kind of amazing that it has these methane-busting properties.
Sam saw that there was the science out there and no one was doing it. He felt so compelled to do something for his children and for his children's children. What if I just sit here and wait for somebody else to do it? Maybe they won't.
We are the next wave, I think, of climate action. So we have a sense of urgency. The window is closing.
I could never imagine Sam doing some of the things that he's doing. The forums that he has to talk to, the scale and in the sectors that he's talking.
What you seem to be saying is that the science is established, this stuff works, but you're currently stuck in this bureaucratic limbo.
That's correct.
Sam has come a long way very fast, but he still has to shift a lot of mindsets and get people behind him to make this work.
The risks that he's taken have been pretty significant, but I heard a lovely quote the other day. It's the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world who do, and I think Sam's one of those people. He's at the bleeding edge of this, there's no doubt about it.
Hi guys, how you doing?
How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
My life is crazy.
How's your day? How was school?
It was good.
Awesome.
I guess I'm living a bit of a disjointed life in a way. I just spend a lot of time away from the family in Tasmania.
Is it cold?
It's beautiful weather actually, but it's crisp, but like stunning.
My family are in northern New South Wales, and so that's something that's a little bit unorthodox. But I try and speak to the kids and the family every day.
When are you coming home?
I'm hoping to get home on the weekend.
Really? Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so used to things now that I feel like this is normal and I see him a lot, but I probably don't see him a lot. And we miss him, but Sam has to be down there. He's involved in every aspect of the business.
What are you doing?
I'm showing a bunch of farmers around the site.
So you've got a busy week?
Yeah, really busy week.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get to selling the road. So come on through.
Sam and I have a stream of farmers coming through the facility here at Triabunna where we have our research and development.
So there's a warm water and a cold water species. It's not so much the temperature, it's the light.
Livestock are one of the dominant sources of global methane emissions. And we think we found a way to reduce those emissions by growing a special seaweed and developing a supplement that can be fed to cows and sheep.
So a really simplified way to look at this is to think of a cow as a car, and that the methane emissions from a cow equal a car on the road. You take one cow and reduce its emissions completely, you've taken the emissions from a car off the road.
So we show quite a lot of farmers the solution that we're building, talk to them about how seaweed cultivation works.
Once it reaches a certain density, the growth plateaus, and we have to harvest the seaweed.
I think it's fair to say that Sam doesn't look like your typical farmer or scientist, but he has that ability to communicate.
People look at the career switch. They think it's incredible. How does that happen? It's not such a strange thing when you know Sam and you know who he is as a person.
I was born in Melbourne, the second of 5 kids. Moved to Noosa when I was 10, and my parents had separated, and my mum was raising us kids on her own, more or less.
Life was difficult. I realised I had a lot of bills and a lot of debts that I didn't know about, and so I had to start working every day.
There was 4 kids under 12, and the house was chaotic. but she always made things really positive. Growing up, we were outdoors all the time. So we would go on bushwalks and camping, and I think a lot of my environmental focus has come from her.
Sam was always different. All of the kids, they all had the same boardies, a T-shirt, tracksuit, whatever it was. Sam would have a waistcoat that he'd got from an op shop, and he would have John Lennon glasses and he'd have a bandana. And everyone else is dressed like everyone else. But Sam was always running his own race.
When Sam started in the fashion industry in the early 2000s, it was a really exciting time because that's when we really rose to this global profile and it put Australian designers on the map. You know, there was a lot of exciting designers like Zimmerman, Colette Dinnigan, Sassenbide.
Sam had a very strong creative talent, so he was really able to flourish in that environment.
He was designing for a really big Australian brand at the time called Bracewell, quite contemporary men's and women fashion.
There was this electric creative energy. It was just a real buzz, and we were all quite, you know, connected and friends and helping each other out.
Sam and I both worked in fashion, and he actually was helping me get a collection out for Fashion Week one year, so that's how we met.
When Cherie arrived at the studio in Redfern, I had no shoes on, and I might have had like a turban or something around my head, or something weird. I think she must have thought I was crazy, but it worked.
I think at that time, you know, a lot of brands had the intention of making locally, but that wasn't really sustainable from a financial point of view. So quite quickly, you know, the production was taken offshore, predominantly China and also in India. So it was really the beginning of that fast fashion movement. For Sam, it never sat well with him about the way things were being made.
I saw some of these working environments, whether it's on the farms, in the mills, to in the sewing factories where, you know, people are working in terrible conditions, getting paid peanuts. It was really then that I thought if I wanted to do this myself, I would want to do it differently.
Sam actually started his own fashion label. He had this very strong sustainable and ethical stance back then when no one was really thinking like that.
Sam would have to go overseas often, check in with suppliers, you know, visually see his supply chain, meet his makers, know how people are working.
He was really championing this new way of operating, and that was a difficult time. The clothes were priced higher than others, and definitely there was resistance in the market to paying more for ethical product.
Essentially, I wasn't really having the impact that we'd set out to in the first place. We wanted to find something with more purpose and meaning, and a way to have a bigger impact on the environment.
I really hate showing this graph, but you can see our trajectory there in terms of warming greenhouse gas concentrations.
Back in 2017, we were listening to a webinar with the Climate Council and Professor Tim Flannery talking about the IPCC report.
Back to the atmosphere.
We were both shocked, actually, and horrified. It scared us.
Those numbers are so large that they baffle us.
We could actually see data on how fast global warming was occurring and how real that was for the first time.
This is really a new phase in addressing the climate crisis, and it demands new thinking.
At the end of that call, Tim Flannery began to talk about some of the solutions, and one of those solutions was seaweed.
There are so many different kinds of seaweed. The scalability is the big thing about seaweed farming.
I felt like there was almost a call to action there, that we need, you know, people with entrepreneurial nous to roll up their sleeves and help drive this for the planet.
Sam turned to me and he said, "That's it, I'm going to grow seaweed." And I was like, okay. Really?
To be fair, I didn't know how or whether or not I could do it. I really wanted to have a crack at it.
About 10 years ago, I was part of a team at James Cook University that investigated with CSIRO the effect of natural products from seaweeds on reducing methane emissions in livestock. The team discovered one special seaweed called Asparagopsis. What we found within the seaweed was a suite of compounds, many of them related, that would switch off the bacteria that produce the methane. And that had a very significant impact on methane emissions from animals.
This was really a world first. They were the first people to demonstrate that the Asparagopsis seaweed reduced methane by up to 98%. So it had the potential to have an enormous real-world impact.
Methane has 28 times the warming impact of regular carbon dioxide, and about 15 to 16% of global emissions come from methane from livestock production. Everybody used to think this was a big joke, you know, the cows burp and fart out this gas. But we have learned that that gas is incredibly important when it comes to climate change. I had been researching seaweed, so when I read that paper, I was really excited. I thought, wow, this is so easy.
Sam called me out of the blue and had a real genuine interest in understanding seaweed, what it could do, but particularly what it could do for climate change.
I was talking to friends and family about this idea of growing seaweed, and I think they thought I was pretty wacky. It is, I guess in hindsight, a pretty crazy idea.
I remember sitting down with Sam and on this particular day, he was waxing lyrical about this amazing seaweed. And my first thought was to introduce him to another dear friend of mine, Stephen Turner.
Hey, Sam. Thank you.
Someone with a little bit of the financial and commercial acumen to bring to his idea.
We ordered you a coffee, by the way.
Thank you.
And she said, Stephen, if you have one cup of coffee with Sam, you will start a business with him. And I thought, there's not a hope. But we had the cup of coffee, and that afternoon I went home, did my research, and was amazed.
A proof point for what is required to drive adoption.
The next day I was on the phone to him saying, we can do this. It's a weed. It can't be that difficult.
They brought Dion on board as the chief financial officer, and then it was like these three dudes that went off like superheroes to start growing seaweed.
In early 2019, we found a site in Tribunna, which is about an hour and a half from Hobart. The seaweed is annually abundant, it's wild, native, and there's an established aquaculture industry down there. Tribunna is a tiny town. I think it was the third place settled by Europeans after Sydney and Hobart, and came Tribunna. So it's a very old town with a lot of history, but it's a town that has relatively high unemployment.
Hey Connor, how are you guys? It's away.
We could see that if we were going to be successful at this, we would need not only the seaweed scientists, but we'd need the harvesting people, the packing people, the people in the factory. We'd need the boat crews.
I was born here in Tribunna. If you come in and you start employing 30 or 40 people, it's a big difference to a small town. The town in the last 20 years had some big knocks. The forest industry, that went 2012, I think. So there's a lot of employment gone, lost here. Sam come along with his great idea with the seaweed. Yeah, we're all excited and hopefully it works.
When we started, things were pretty basic. We had to build most of the facilities that we used. We had a tin roof lab to begin with. I think initially people were curious, they didn't really know what we were up to.
We set out with great confidence and Sam's enthusiasm that we would be able to do this. But it proved much harder than we had thought.
The first thing we had to do is really learn how to grow the seaweed. We collected samples and we had to really observe the seaweed and understand those natural environmental cues that trigger reproduction.
From day one, we would be walking the beaches, looking in the rocks, trying to find this red seaweed, finding red seaweeds that we thought were the right seaweed but were the wrong seaweeds.
I would get up every morning in my board shorts and get into the ocean. So I would dive every day and look for the seaweed and what plants it's growing next to and how abundant it happened to be and whether it was reproductive. We started growing the seaweed on land, really because Rocky said it would be really challenging to grow the seaweed in the ocean.
We bought a second-hand pond from Queensland and we brought it down on a truck. And at this stage, it was very much Sam and I and Dion just hands-on doing whatever we could to make these things work. We were funding it ourselves, so money was certainly tight.
Asparagus has got to be, well, possibly one of the most difficult seaweeds to grow. Maybe if I'd known how difficult it was going to be, would we have started, I guess, is one of the questions that I ask myself sometimes.
It was just problem after problem. The seaweed would blow away, or it would be too cold, or the nutrients wouldn't be working, or there'd be too much rainfall and too much fresh water.
You know, lots and lots of trial and error. It took us a couple of years to learn to grow the seaweed on land. You know, it was a huge first step.
It was really exciting, actually. That was a huge moment when they discovered how to farm it. We all went down and we all went and had a look, and it was impressive.
With the proof that we could grow the seaweed, we set out to raise $5 million, and we were able to do that. In addition, we've received just over $10 million from state and federal government support. And from that, we were able to get the money to build the best laboratory.
It is pretty much a nursery for baby seaweed. Whatever we grow here starts from here.
What we're doing is growing different strains of seaweed under different light and temperature conditions, essentially trying to speed things up to maximise growth because there's a hell of a lot of livestock out there.
We never lost sight of the fact that to be effective, we need to grow a lot of seaweed. So we needed to grow the crops both on land and in sea.
We were told all the way along you could never grow the seaweed in the ocean. But we gave it a crack. We ran a series of experiments where we seeded small amounts of the seaweed onto ropes that we submerged in the ocean. And then one day, we had a surprising outcome, which is that, yes, actually you can grow it in the marine environment. We got a guy from Hobart with an underwater drone. We'd never, ever seen the seaweed like this before. So it was just in full bloom. And we're like, wow, it's working. This is amazing.
We had our own seaweed boat designed and built in Tasmania. The first seaweed boat ever to be built in Australia. It was a great day when that was launched.
So we're heading out to our marine farm out here. It's just inside Maria Island that you can see over there. It's in a body of water called Mercury Passage.
We have two boats that go out every day to put seaweed out or bring seaweed back in from there.
What's happening here is that the boys are using young seedlings, attaching them to a structural rope that we call a backbone, which is a structure that the seaweed grows on. And then we leave the seaweed for 8 weeks for it to mature, and when we come back and we harvest.
We worked out how to grow the seaweed well, and that was great, but there's a really important next step, and that's how to process the seaweed efficiently to deliver the product that goes to the animals.
Grazing cattle are a little difficult, so we're developing a lick block solution to be able to provide these guys access when farmers can't reach them.
For dairy cows and feedlot cattle, the delivery is much simpler. We've now created an oil-based supplement, and that's ideal for delivery to the dairy industry.
Today we're going out to see Richard Gardner, who's one of the first farmers who used the product. It's always good to go out and see him and see how things are going. Richard's been involved in a dairy trial on his farm that's been subsidised by the dairy company Fonterra to make sure that not only is the methane being abated, but also making sure that the products that we're producing are both safe for animals and also for humans.
Farm on around 2,500 hectares in the Midlands of Tasmania. We milk 1,250 cows. So I've got 3 kids in their early 20s and they're all really supportive of the work we're doing. They really want to see us do something about the emissions from our farm.
You mean it's warmer over on the coast?
On the East Coast? Yeah, absolutely.
Big time.
We started doing trials a couple of years ago and we had absolutely no problems. It was all good.
We know how many cows exactly are getting fed. It's just making sure they get the right dose.
So then we started to set into doing some large-scale trials.
We're feeding 1,200 cows here every morning and half of those cows are getting fed oil with the Asparagopsis.
We're getting at least 30 or 40% reduction in emissions. That's exciting to start off with. But I think for a lot of farmers, the concern will be about where the dollars are. Is this going to cost me something or am I going to make something from it?
The current cost is about $1 a head per day. It's a cost that would have a very small impact on a retail litre of milk, but a cost that has a significant impact on the primary producer.
At the moment, the economics of this don't work for a farmer. So Sam's still got a real challenge getting this into the marketplace.
I think we've come an enormous way, but we've had a little bit of a roadblock really around, farmers' propensity to pay and really, the supply chain collaboration that's required in order to offset the cost. It's going to be really difficult to roll out these sorts of initiatives without government support. So we're heading to Parliament House in Hobart. We want to work with government and industry to fast-track the adoption of low methane feed supplements that can reduce emissions from livestock production in Australia.
Sam's been devoting a lot of his time to talking to politicians, in particular about the issue of carbon credits.
So currently, your business can't attract credits.
That's correct.
Right.
We really need a carbon credit for the feed additive to be recognised for the methane that the livestock owner is reducing.
Farmers would then receive money that would offset the cost of buying the more expensive feed.
Whilst the company has an impressive customer base, these are only feeding a small number of head. Sometimes gets frustrated at the pace at which things are happening. Some days, feel like you're really winning, and then other times you feel like you're struggling with setbacks.
The frustration at the moment is pretty similar to what he felt probably back in the fashion industry, where it's getting people to adopt in the time frame that it actually needs to happen.
I do feel a little bit like I've been here before. In here I've got 1.5 million doses of the feed with a limited shelf life. So, we've got 10 months to move this, which is, disappointing.
So I've just got a couple of things for you. This is the draft application for us to progress the certification.
Sam carries the daily pressure of having to make the books balance. What started with just the 3 of us with these hopes, we now have over 55 full-time staff.
Wherever possible.
It's hard work. It's a huge commitment. There's a lot of pressure that comes with this role in that position, and that does worry me.
Milestones are really important for boosting their morale and making them feel like the work they're doing is making a difference.
Oh, nice one.
So this one for you, Sam.
Thank you.
Entering the market is not easy, but there have been some wonderfully encouraging moments, and one of those was this year when a large burger chain took the seaweed product, used it in the production of meat for a burger.
The grilled burger chain released what they call the Game Changer burger. They're actually asking their customers to pay an extra $1. More times than not, we're getting customers saying yes.
So this is from a farm in northern New South Wales. These are F1 Wagyu.
It was a real thrill seeing the product out there. Really exciting milestone for us.
Being a seaweed farmer certainly is not without frustration, but there's been a lot of good news. We've had strong interest from Japan. We have the largest integrated beef producer starting production and launching a product in the UK.
We're looking at international markets. And so far, we're getting some positive signs.
What about you? What are your plans for the weekend?
Hoping to get home to see the family.
Wow, that's nice.
I feel like that's a sweet little spot just down there. When he comes home, it's the best thing in the world. And the kids will run at him and they will sometimes cry and they'll be screaming. But sometimes he does walk in and I'm like, oh, here you are.
Did you get much feedback after the concert the other day?
Yeah, I got lots of feedback.
Cherie's incredibly supportive. I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing without her support, and also the support of the kids as well. They care about the business that we're building and the impact it can have.
Obviously, the goal is to spend more time together, but I would never put a time limit on this. This is absolutely everything for Sam.
We'll just post up here, hey?
He's committed his family to it, a whole spectrum of people.
This is far more than a job to me. This is a passion project, and it's something that I care deeply about. This is the one thing I feel the governments make these targets, but we as individuals should also be thinking about the role that we play in delivering better environmental outcomes.
I really want to support Sam because he's one of those people out there who's having a go at reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
Many other groups in Australia are trying to solve the livestock methane issue as well. But Sam is following a dream. We need people like that to solve this problem. You know, climate change has millions and billions of causes, and so we need millions and billions of solutions.
It's really important that we have hope. I think hope is all we have. You know, the scale of the issue is enormous, and we're running out of time. But there are things we can do, and we've been given a slither of an opportunity to resolve climate change, and also a slither of time to do so. And so we have to take that hope and throw everything at it.